Most people think that in a crisis, the most dangerous things are missiles, drones, or warships. But for the Gulf elites, there is something even more terrifying: the flow of money. Right now, more than 2 trillion USD in assets from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar are sitting in the US financial system. And in the increasingly unstable geopolitical context, that asset is no longer simply a safe haven, but could become the most vulnerable point. Why are Washington's closest allies starting to consider a different path, right at this sensitive moment? This is not just a story about money. This is a story about power, security, and a strategy to detach from the trajectory of America that is gradually becoming apparent. That trillion-dollar chess game is just beginning. And this time, what decides the game may not be weapons, but who controls the flow of money. The answer does not lie in weapons. It lies in an unprecedented independent strategy. We will decode this trillion-dollar chess game right after this. Let's temporarily forget about the wars and look straight at what is quietly operating behind them: the flow of money. Not just a few $billion, but it's trillions, moving like ocean currents beneath the global financial ocean. Who are they? Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar, 3 countries located in the desert. Their total population is only about 60 million people, equivalent to California and Texas combined. Small in population. But what about financial power? A giant. They are holding over 2 trillion USD right on American soil, accounting for about 4 to 5% of the total foreign capital inflow into the US. Just 3 seemingly ordinary names, yet they can shake an entire system. And then a question arises: who really depends on whom? People often think that money in the Gulf only lies in oil barrels. Mistake. It's in your pocket. More than 420 billion USD from sovereign wealth funds, SWF, are flowing directly into private equity funds. From the most ambitious AI startups to the delivery apps you use every day. When you book a tech ride or scroll through a new social media platform, it's very likely that its profits are being used to build future cities in the desert. They are not just buying shares, they are buying the future. The American dream is promoted as technological innovation. But what about the reality? The US is providing the brain, while the Gulf region is providing the heartbeat. If this flow of money stops, Silicon Valley will just be a barren valley. Have you ever wondered how much of the phone you are holding actually belongs to Americans? But that's not all. Don't forget about the bond market. Estimates show that the Gulf region holds more than 300 billion USD in US public debt. Imagine the US economy as an addict, needing continuous credit injections to maintain its prosperity. And Saudi Arabia has been the most stable supplier of that drug for the past 50 years. Not to mention, there's still real estate. In Miami or New York, the money of the UAE and Qatari princes has turned concrete blocks into golden bars in the sky. They own iconic hotels and skyscrapers that even Americans would never set foot in. The American dream of land ownership seems to be being fragmented by bottomless checks from the Middle East. A bitter irony. Americans pay taxes to maintain the military protecting the Gulf, and then the Gulf uses oil profits to buy back the very land Americans stand on. In the end, this is a perfect loop. Or is it a sophisticated trap? This is the moment we touch upon the secret that Wall Street has always wanted to hide. True power does not lie in possession, but in the right to refuse. Those who are sufficiently astute will surely recognize this. To cause a financial shock, the Gulf countries do not need to sell everything off in one night. That's too crude and outdated. They just need to stop new investments. When the $3 trillion commitments for the future are indefinitely postponed, when the negotiations in Davos suddenly turned cold, that's when the US realized it had become too dependent on its old obedient allies. Small in population, but huge in capital. This wealth used to be the strong bond between Washington and Riyadh. But now, when interests no longer intersect, it has become a critical weakness for both sides. The US loses capital, while the Gulf region loses the safety of its assets. If you find these analyses of the underground cash flow interesting, don't forget to hit subscribe, because next, we will talk about something even more fragile than money: trust, and what happens when trust begins to change. But before we get to this major change, please leave a comment. In your opinion, can America survive without capital flow from the Middle East in the next 5 years? There's something interesting about money. It doesn't move first. Trust is what comes first. For half a century, the Gulf region has bought trust from Washington with blank checks. They believed that in exchange for the flow of USD into Wall Street, they would have an impenetrable steel shield. But look at what is happening in the minds of a person in Riyadh or Dubai right now. A cruel question is being asked. Is the US bringing its military here to protect us? Or to turn us into targets? The dream of the Gulf is a peaceful sky to build super cities like Neom or Burj Khalifa. But the reality is much harsher. The US, military presence, once considered a lifelong insurance, now resembles a magnet for risks. When American bases spring up, they don't just bring weapons, they also bring America's enemies. The audience in the region is beginning to awaken. They realize that whenever Washington conflicts with Iran or proxy forces, it is the glittering cities of the Gulf that are the first targets of missiles. The US provides security, but it seems they are also the ones creating the demand for that security. And that is a perfect loop for the defense industry, but an economic nightmare for countries that want to become global tourism and financial hubs. Ask yourself, if your house is next to a flammable gas station, would you still feel safe just because a security guard is standing at the door? Certainly not. You will want to move. But the fear of missiles is nothing compared to the fear of weaponizing currency. The freezing of Russian assets in 2022 sent a lightning bolt straight into the hearts of the Gulf monarchies. They were shocked to realize sending trillions of USD into the American banking system is not like putting money in a safe. That is, putting your neck into a noose whose knot is in Washington. Being dependent on the USD means you agree to let another country decide whether you are a friend or foe tomorrow morning. The insight from the crowd is very clear. They don't want to be puppets. They want independence. Withdrawing capital is not just a profit calculation. It is an escape from oppression. They see the lessons of those who came before and understand that just one wrong decision on the political chessboard and decades of national building efforts can vanish with a single click at the U.S. Treasury. Ironically, the money they earned from oil is being used to buy the noose that tightens around them. This shift is no longer a hypothesis. It is a profound shift in perception. When trust erodes, the flow of money will follow. We are witnessing a rational divorce. The Gulf countries are quietly building steel arteries like the Adcop pipeline to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. And at the same time, they are also creating new financial arteries to avoid the USD. This is the point of no return. The United States may still be the #1 military power, but in the eyes of the Gulf region, they are no longer the sole protector. They have become a risk variable. If you are watching this, perhaps you can also feel the tremors of the old world order. We conduct these in-depth analyses to help you see through the fog of mainstream media. Hit subscribe now if you don't want to miss the final game between money and power. So, when the shield has cracked and the check has been recalled, what chain reaction will crash down on the global economy? The answer lies in the domino effect that we are about to explore right now. Will America realize that they are losing the most precious thing before it's too late? Let's start with a very simple assumption. No crash, no panic, no mass withdrawals, just slowing down. That is a dream. A system large enough to absorb all changes. An economy that can self-balance. But in reality, not every shock is loud. Some just need to slow down a beat. The financial world does not operate with silent gold vaults. It operates through movement. When the flow of money from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, or Qatar enters the US, it doesn't just sit idle in safes. It is the fuel for the growth engine. But what happens when the world's largest gas station decides to turn off the taps? This is no longer a diplomatic debate in the newspapers. This is a domino effect, with a powerful impact, reaching into the pockets of the most ordinary citizens in Ohio or Florida. The US is dreaming of an era of global AI dominance, but that dream is extremely costly. ChatGPT or NVIDIA's superchips need billions of USD each quarter just to stay in the race. And guess who is signing those checks? Venture capital funds from the Gulf are the anonymous bookmakers of Silicon Valley. When they start delaying their investments, tech unicorns will realize a harsh reality. American brainpower cannot run without Middle Eastern oil. Valuations plummet. Ambitious AI projects are shelved. The US may have algorithms, but the Gulf has electricity and cash. A marriage of convenience is now on the brink of divorce. Can Silicon Valley shine without the influx of capital from the desert? But the story doesn't just stop within Silicon Valley. It spreads to states that are traditionally strong in tourism. Let's talk about the most genuine emotion: economic fear. The crowd mentality is not exaggerated when it comes to mentioning empty hotels or bankrupt airlines. When the super rich of the Gulf stop pouring money into real estate funds in New York or Miami, a huge gap appears. The iconic towers that were once the pride of capitalism now face the risk of becoming soulless concrete blocks. When tourists no longer dare to fly to Dubai for fear of missiles, and when the flow of money from Dubai no longer streams to New York to buy $10 million penthouses, it's not just a drop in sales. That is the collapse of a way of life. When the richest people in the world start tightening their belts, that's when the middle class should start worrying. And then, this is the most tense point of the rope. To maintain a lavish lifestyle and enormous public debt. Imagine, if Saudi Arabia just stopped buying more US debt. Just stop. No need to sell off. The supply of bonds exceeds demand. Prices drop, and interest rates will soar. At this point, the story is no longer about billionaires. It lies in your own mortgage and car loan bills. If Saudi turns its back, interest rates in the US will rise, and life for a family in Ohio will become more expensive than ever. This is a silent war waged with the most advanced tools, but its influence seeps into every meal of every American family. The US has used debt to build prosperity, and now, the key to that prosperity lies in the hands of those they just labeled as risky. We know you are knowledgeable viewers, those who are not satisfied with superficial news. Your support by clicking subscribe is the motivation for us to continue conducting analyses like this. Don't get lost in the maze of data. Let's look at the big picture together. The truth is, they don't need to sell off, they just need to stop pouring in money. And when silence begins to speak, the old world order will officially collapse. But is this the end of American power? Or is this actually a grand chess game where the Gulf region is using money to reclaim its dignity? Let's step into the final part to see the true power of silence. We often mistakenly believe that power is measured by the number of nuclear warheads or aircraft carrier fleets on the oceans. But in the era of 2026, the Gulf dynasties are redefining the concept of weapons. They have come to understand a cold truth. In a world run on debt, the one who controls the flow of capital holds the reins. Look deeper into this great game. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, or Qatar do not need to send an ultimatum to Washington. They don't need to declare war on international forums either. Their weapon is silence. A silence worth trillions of dollars. When Washington hopes for reinvestments to save the bond market, the Gulf simply looks the other way. They use cash flow as leverage to force the minds at the White House to listen to demands that were previously often ignored. Supreme power is not about loud noises, but about stopping the signing of checks. America's dream is a compliant ally always willing to pay for any geopolitical risk. The reality? The Gulf region is using that very cash flow to buy back its self-esteem and a level playing field at the negotiation table. They are no longer the gas stations of the world. They have become the central banks of projects that are changing the global landscape. Can you feel the transformation of these giants? However, don't be mistaken that we will see an immediate collapse. This is not a Hollywood action movie with notable explosions. This is a documentary about patience. The decoupling between the Gulf and the US will not happen overnight. It will take decades. Why? Because the global financial system is an intricate web, where if you pull too hard, you will hurt yourself too. The Gulf still needs technology from the US. They still need the stability of the American market to protect the enormous value of the assets they have accumulated over the past half-century. But they are starting to build escape routes. They are diversifying risk by investing in Asia, in infrastructure in the Southern Hemisphere, and in alternative payment systems. They are not completely turning their backs on the US. They are simply refusing to put all their eggs in a cracking basket. This is a calculated shift, not a momentary outburst, a peaceful yet decisive divorce. Most of us often ask, Is this the end of the USD? The answer is not simply yes or no. It is the end of unipolarity. In the new multipolar world, Gulf money will flow to where their interests are most respected, rather than to where there are the most troops. They are using capital to create an order where they are the financial gatekeepers. A cruel irony for America. They spent decades controlling the world with military power, only to realize that the key to domestic stability lies in the hands of allies they once considered dependent. So, when this game ends, who will be the one truly smiling? The US with its colossal power legacy, or the Gulf region with its powerful checks? Let's join us in the conclusion to glimpse the future of the global financial system in the next 10 years. Is this a turning point, or just a temporary shock? We have gone through a journey from trillion-dollar figures to deep fractures within a historic alliance. But after all the charts and technical analysis, what really remains? The truth is, the world no longer fears an America running out of oil, but America should start fearing a world lacking Gulf investment. Remember this: what is changing in 2026 is not the balance in central banks. The number can go up or down. What is truly restructuring our planet is the map of faith. For half a century, that trust was a one-way street toward Washington. Now, that trust is finding its way home, or seeking new owners. When Saudi Arabia, the UAE, or Qatar withdraw their investments, they are not just pulling out money. They are withdrawing their recognition of an old financial order where one country has the right to decide the economic fate of the rest. The dream of a flat world under American leadership is giving way to a more rugged, equitable, and multipolar reality. Money is inherently the most cowardly thing in the world. It will only stay where it feels respected and safe. We may be standing at the final chapter of the petrodollar era. This is not a sudden death, but a slow, irreversible disintegration. The United States will still be a superpower, but they will have to learn how to live in a world where their voice is no longer an absolute command. The Gulf no longer wants to be a supporting character in someone else's movie. They have written their own script, with capital as the most powerful screenwriting tool. This chess game is still ongoing, and every move you make from investing to how you perceive the world is a part of it. Which side are you on in this historical shift? Will the U.S. find alternative capital to maintain its dominant position, or is this the beginning of the end of the petrodollar era? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next in-depth analyses of the New World Order. The content in this video is based on publicly available data, economic reports, and expert analyses up to April 2026. This content is for informational, educational, and analytical documentary purposes only, and is not investment, financial, or legal advice. We are not responsible for any personal decisions made based on this information. Thank you for watching. See you in the next videos.